Today we're going to look at the anatomy of an abusive relationship. Who is likely to do it? How to spot them? What is the cycle of the abuse? What constitutes abuse? And how to escape if you are trapped. With Chris Brown and Rihanna. And the reason that I'm talking about this is because they draw attention to it. I want to put a frame around this for everybody because I think we have a graphic representation here of what took place. I'm going to read from an affidavit that is filed by the detective in this case that did the research. And y'all listen to this and we'll then talk about this incident. They refer to the victim as Robin F. because there's a tendency to protect the victim. Robin F. picked up Brown's cellular phone and observed a 3-page text message from a woman who Brown had a previous sexual relationship with. A verbal argument ensued. And now this is important because it often starts verbally. They don't just out of the blue attack. A verbal argument ensued and Brown pulled the vehicle over on an unknown street.
Okay, wait a minute. What kind of car is he in?
He's in a white Bronco, but first of all, he broke the back door down to get in.
Okay, wait a minute. What's your name?
Nichole Simpson.
Okay, is he the sportscaster or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Reached over Robin F. with his right hand, opened the car door and attempted to force her out. When he could not, he took his right hand and shoved her head against the passenger window of the vehicle, causing a 1-inch raised circular contusion. He punched her in the left eye with his right hand. He then drove away in the vehicle and continued to punch her in the face with his right hand while steering the vehicle with his left hand. The assault caused her mouth to fill with blood and blood to splatter all over her clothing and the interior of the vehicle. He says, "I am going to beat the blank out of you when we get home. You wait and see." She then made a call to her assistant, but she was only faking the call. "I'm on my way home. Make sure the cops are there when I arrive." He responds, "You just did the stupidest thing ever. Now I'm really going to kill you." Brown resumed punching her, and she interlocked her fingers behind her head, brought her elbows forward to protect her face. She then bent over at the waist, placing her elbows and face near her lap in an attempt to protect her head and face from the barrage that continued. He continued to punch her in the left arm, causing contusions. She grabbed a cell phone and attempted to send a text message to her other personal assistant. He snatched it out of her hand and threw it out the window. He's keeping her isolated. He's not allowing her to reach out to anyone to get any help. She picked up the cell phone with her left hand. Before she could make the call, he placed her in a headlock with his right hand, continuing to drive with his left hand. He pulled her close, bit her on the left ear.
See, look at him. You can see it. You can see it. There it is.
I can't believe what I'm seeing, fellas.
She could feel the vehicle swerving left to right. He turned the car off. She removed the key, sat on it. He did not know where it was. He continued punching her in the face and arms. He placed her in a headlock, positioning the front of her throat between his bicep and forearm. He was applying pressure to her left and right carotid artery, and she began to lose consciousness. She attempted to gouge his eyes. He bit her finger and continued punching her. She eventually got her feet between her and him and pushed him away. He got out and walked off from the car. Now, what message does this send when she reconciles with this guy?
Well, it's a horrible message because it's a trap that so many women fall into, that they think that because his behavior has changed that they're out of the woods. And most abusers have a propensity to be very, very nice, very, very kind people. We meet them at a point that they're in crisis, but in reality, if you're in a relationship with them, they can go from being very angry to being very, very nice. And her reconciling with him creates a misnomer for many, many other young people.
Well, there's something. The anatomy of an abusive relationship is really very simple. There's a cycle of violence that takes place. Number one, tension builds. There's a tension building stage where it's building up and they're just about to blow. And then the second stage is an acute battering stage. This is what happened in the car. That's the acute battering stage. And then the third stage is the honeymoon stage. This is where, oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I will never do this again. I hate that this happened. I'll make it up to you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But then the cycle starts over again, because the truth is that nearly half abusers reoffend, most within the first 6 months.
You know, women can get frightened of you when they want to. She was there for 18 years, so she was scared for 18 years. I think it's a little more than that.
Did you ever hit her?
Yes.
Why?
I don't know. I can't remember why. Well, we've had our fights. It's like I would think anybody have their fights. I think like sometimes being frustrated, or whatever reasons. I'm going to go a little bit on this with you, man. I'm not going to debate on this. I'm not going to go into that, but I want to be truthful about it. I would say this. Well, I have slapped Tina, and we've had a fight. The thing that I saw in the movie was a total lie. It never happened. My mother was a woman, so I didn't do no more to Tina than I would expect any man to do to my mother, and I loved my mother.
And then you've got what's called traumatic bonding, and it's because there's an imbalance of power, and there's an intermittent reinforcement schedule. You never know whether you're going to get hugged or hit. And so that psychologically, that's a very strong tendency to stay involved in that relationship. So what we have now are two role models that I think are sending really bad messages to our kids.
Rick James was arrested along with his girlfriend Tanya Hijazi for allegedly imprisoning a 24-year-old woman in his Hollywood Hills home, torturing her allegedly with a hot cocaine pipe and forcing her to commit sexual acts on his girlfriend Tanya Hijazi.
Well, yeah, the other thing about it is that there are no quick cures for the gentleman. I believe that Chris can get some help, but many, many times we put a Band-Aid on what is cancer. We'll go to somebody, relatives, friends, and even clergy for counseling. They'll have prayer with you or talk to you or give you 5 steps, and you think, oh, he's better, when in reality it's a lot of hard work involved in getting over anger management.
Well, couldn't agree more. The bishop is going to be with us throughout the show today, as I want to have his wisdom on this subject. Because coming up next...
Police say Rodman was arrested Wednesday night after officers answered a domestic dispute call. He was jailed for investigation of felony domestic violence and was freed early Thursday.
They said he never gave you niggas money!